Imagine waking up in ancient Rome almost 2,000 years ago. There are no alarm clocks, no electricity, no running water in your apartment, no refrigerator, and definitely no coffee machine. But outside your window is the largest and most powerful city in the Western world. Welcome to Rome. It's the 2nd century AD, when the Roman Empire is near the height of its power. And this is Marcus. Marcus isn't an emperor. He isn't a senator or a famous general. He's just an ordinary free Roman trying to make a living in one of the busiest cities on earth. And his day starts much earlier than yours probably does. 6 a.m., Rome wakes up. Sunlight begins to enter Marcus's room. He lives in an insula, a multi-story apartment building where many ordinary Romans live. And it's probably not very comfortable. The wealthy can afford large houses with courtyards, private kitchens, servants, and sometimes their own water supply. Marcus cannot. His apartment is small. Depending on where he lives in the building, he may have to climb several flights of stairs just to reach it. And the higher you go, the cheaper, and often worse, the apartments become. There is another problem: fire. Roman apartment buildings can be crowded, and cooking involves open flames. A small accident can become a disaster. Building collapses are another danger. So Marcus lives in the capital of one of history's greatest empires, but his home might not feel particularly luxurious. And when he wakes up, there is no private bathroom waiting for him. 6:30 a.m., breakfast. Marcus is hungry, but forget bacon, eggs, pancakes, and orange juice. A simple Roman breakfast might consist of bread, perhaps with cheese, olives, fruit, or something left from the previous day. Wine is common in Roman life, usually diluted with water. But what might surprise Marcus most about our breakfast is not the food, it's the refrigerator. Without refrigeration, food has to be eaten fresh or preserved by drying, salting, smoking, or other methods. And if Marcus lives in a small apartment, he may not even have a proper kitchen. So where does he get hot food? The streets. Rome has places selling prepared food and drink, making it possible for people without elaborate kitchens to eat outside the home. After his small breakfast, Marcus heads downstairs. And now things get interesting. 7 a.m. Welcome to the streets of Rome. The moment Marcus steps outside, ancient Rome attacks his senses. People are everywhere. Merchants are opening shops. Workers are carrying materials. Animals move through the streets. Customers argue over prices. You hear conversations, shouting, and carts. And then there are the smells. Fresh bread, smoke, animals, food, waste. Rome may be technologically astonishing for its time, but it is definitely not a modern sanitized city. At its height, Rome probably had a population on the order of 1 million people. Keeping such an enormous pre-industrial city alive required a logistical system stretching across the empire. Ships bring grain and other goods from distant provinces. Aqueducts carry huge quantities of water toward the city. Roads connect Rome with territories thousands of kilometers away. Marcus probably doesn't think much about any of this. He just wants to get to work. 8 a.m., time to work. Marcus could have many different jobs. He might be a craftsman, shopkeeper, construction worker, or laborer. For our story, let's make him a shoemaker. He spends much of the day in a small workshop, cutting and working leather and dealing with customers. But the Roman economy is very different from ours. There is no standard modern 9-to-5 working day. Working hours depend on the profession, season, and circumstances. Many people begin work early, taking advantage of daylight. For Marcus, work is physical and repetitive, and there is no weekend in the modern sense. The Roman calendar does include numerous festivals and public holidays, but daily life for ordinary people can involve a great deal of work. There is also something happening around Marcus that would be horrifying to us today: slavery. Enslaved people are deeply embedded in Roman society. They work in households, farms, workshops, mines, and many other settings. Some are highly educated and work as teachers, secretaries, or physicians. Others endure extraordinarily brutal conditions. So when we imagine the impressive temples, roads, and villas of ancient Rome, we also have to remember that this society depends heavily on people who are not free. 12 p.m., lunch. By around midday, Marcus takes a break. Lunch is usually not necessarily the huge meal we might imagine from movies about Rome. He might eat bread, cheese, fruit, vegetables, or leftovers. And there is one ingredient Romans are famous for: garum. Garum is a fermented fish sauce. Romans use versions of it as a condiment in many dishes. To modern ears, fermented fish sauce might not sound especially appetizing, but fish sauces are still important ingredients in several cuisines today. The extravagant Roman banquets you've seen in movies? Those are not how Marcus eats every day. The wealthy might enjoy elaborate meals involving numerous dishes and imported ingredients. Marcus's diet is much simpler. After eating, he returns to work. But when the working part of the day ends, Marcus has something to look forward to, and it's one of Rome's most important social institutions. 3 p.m. Time for a bath. Marcus heads to the public baths. And a Roman bath is not simply a place to wash yourself. Think of it as a combination of a swimming facility, social center, and place to relax. Large bath complexes can be spectacular. Marcus can move through rooms of different temperatures. There's the caldarium, the hot room, the tepidarium, the warm room, and the frigidarium with cold water. But here's something you might not expect. Romans do not necessarily wash themselves with soap in the way we do. Oil can be applied to the skin and then scraped away using a curved instrument called a strigil. The baths are also where Marcus can meet friends, hear gossip, and discuss business. In later imperial Rome, some enormous bath complexes contain gardens and spaces for exercise and other activities. For Marcus, this is one of the luxuries of urban Roman life. He may not have running water in his apartment, but his city can provide monumental public bathing facilities. That contradiction tells you a lot about Rome. 5 p.m. Entertainment. Marcus is finished with work. So what does someone do for fun without television, YouTube, or video games? Rome has plenty of answers. One option is the theater. Another is the circus. And if Marcus is lucky enough to attend an event at the Circus Maximus, he can watch one of the most exciting sports in the Roman world: chariot racing. Imagine enormous crowds screaming for their favorite teams as chariots race around the track at dangerous speeds. Crashes can be spectacular and deadly. Successful charioteers can become celebrities. Then, of course, there are gladiatorial games. But movies sometimes give us a distorted impression of them. Not every Roman spends every afternoon watching gladiators fight to the death. Games are special public events, often connected with festivals and political life. And gladiatorial combat is more complicated than simply 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. Gladiators require training and represent an investment, so death is not automatically the outcome of every fight. Still, violence is undeniably part of Roman public entertainment. For Marcus, these spectacles offer something powerful: an escape from ordinary life. For a few hours, a shoemaker can sit in an enormous arena and experience the same spectacle as tens of thousands of other people. 7 p.m. Dinner now. Marcus returns home for the main meal. A wealthier Roman dinner could become a long social event. Marcus's is more modest. He might eat vegetables, legumes, bread, perhaps fish or some meat depending on his means and circumstances. The Roman diet varies enormously by wealth and location, but grain is fundamental. Feeding Rome requires staggering quantities of it. Some Roman citizens are eligible for state grain distributions, and later systems distribute bread. Food is not merely a private matter. In a city this large, keeping people supplied with basic staples is politically important. An emperor who cannot keep Rome fed has a serious problem. 8 p.m. When darkness arrives. The sun goes down, and now ancient Rome becomes a very different place. There are oil lamps, torches, and other sources of light, but nothing resembling modern street lighting across the whole city. Marcus's apartment becomes dim, and nighttime streets can be unpleasant or dangerous. So unless he has a reason to stay outside, he heads home. He climbs the stairs of his insula. Below him, Rome slowly becomes quieter, but never completely quiet. He can still hear voices, animals, people moving through the streets, perhaps carts transporting goods. Tomorrow, Marcus will wake up and do much of it again. But was life in ancient Rome good? That depends entirely on who you were. If you were wealthy, Rome could offer astonishing luxury. villas, servants, imported foods, political influence, private gardens. But if you were poor, enslaved, sick, or otherwise vulnerable, life could be extremely harsh. Disease is common. Medicine is limited compared with today. Infant and childhood mortality are high. Fires can destroy neighborhoods, and political rights and legal protections are profoundly unequal. Yet Rome also possesses things extraordinary for the ancient world. Aqueducts transport water over great distances. Sewers and drains serve parts of the city. Massive public baths allow huge numbers of people to bathe. Roads and ports connect an empire. Public entertainment attracts enormous crowds. Markets offer products arriving from across the Mediterranean and beyond. Marcus does not know it, but people will still be walking among the ruins of his city almost 2,000 years later. They will study its roads, its buildings, its graffiti, even the food Romans ate. And perhaps the strangest thing about spending a day with Marcus is realizing that despite everything separating us, some parts of his life feel surprisingly familiar. He wakes up. He complains about where he lives. He goes to work. He buys food. He meets his friends. He worries about money. He looks for entertainment. And at the end of a long day, he just wants to go home. The Roman Empire disappeared centuries ago, but the ordinary people who lived inside it, perhaps they weren't quite as different from us as we imagine.